You open your eyes. The first thing you notice isn't the cold. It's the silence. No crackling, no orange light on the cave wall, no smoke smell. Your fire is dead. And in the Ice Age, that sentence is not an inconvenience. It is a death sentence with a deadline. You are the firekeeper, not the hunter, not the leader. The firekeeper. The person whose entire job is making sure the one flame your group owns never, ever goes out. It sounds like a minor role. It is not. In a world without matches, without lighters, without a backup plan, you are the reason your people are warm, the reason meat doesn't rot, and the reason predators keep their distance at night. Last night, it rained through a crack in the shelter roof. This morning, your fire is a wet, black smear, and the ash beneath it is cold enough that you can press your palm flat against it without flinching, which, in your line of work, is the worst possible sign. You have one job. You have already failed at it. Here is what most people get wrong about the Ice Age. They picture cavemen casually rubbing two sticks together and, poof, fire. That is not how it worked, not reliably. Making fire from nothing, with Ice Age tools, took skill, dry material, and time. Sometimes 20 minutes of hard, focused effort even for an expert, using a bow drill or a hand drill to spin a wooden shaft fast enough to create an ember through friction. In howling wind, in wet conditions, in freezing temperatures with numb fingers, it could take much longer. Or it could simply fail, over and over, while the cold kept getting worse. There was a second method too. Striking flint against a lump of iron pyrite to throw sparks, the same basic principle as a modern lighter, just with rocks instead of flint wheels. It was faster than friction when it worked. It also depended entirely on having bone-dry material ready to catch that spark the instant it landed. Both methods shared the same weakness. They needed conditions the Ice Age rarely handed out for free. Dry tinder, steady hands, time you didn't always have. Which is exactly why smart Ice Age groups didn't gamble on making fire from scratch every single day. They relied on you. Your job description, if anyone had bothered to write it down, would read something like this. Keep the fire alive. Every day. Every night. Forever. That means someone is awake near the coals at all hours, feeding them just enough fuel to survive, but not so much they burn out fast. It means carrying embers, wrapped in bark or moss, whenever the band moves camp. It means guarding a small, glowing coal like it's the most valuable object your people own. Because it is. Today, your objective is brutally simple. Get fire back before nightfall. If you fail, there's no reheated dinner tonight. Raw meat in freezing temperatures is at least survivable, but it costs your people energy they can't afford to lose in a landscape that's already trying to starve them. There's no warmth for the children, who lose body heat faster than adults and can't simply tough it out until morning. And there's no light to keep the things that hunt in the dark at a comfortable distance. Cave lions, hyenas, wolves, all of them perfectly capable of deciding that a fireless camp looks a lot less threatening than it did last night. Fire wasn't a comfort item in the Ice Age. It was infrastructure. It cooked food into something your body could actually extract calories from efficiently. It hardened the tips of wooden spears. It let people sit together after dark instead of hiding separately in the cold, which mattered for a species that survived largely because it cooperated. Lose the fire, and you don't just lose warmth. You lose almost every advantage that made your species dangerous instead of prey. You have maybe 8 hours of daylight. The clock started the second you opened your eyes. You reach for the fire kit. A pouch of dry tinder, a fist-sized lump of pyrite, and a sharp piece of flint. Strike them together correctly, and you get a spark hot enough to catch tinder. This is the Ice Age version of a lighter. Except the storm last night didn't just kill your fire. It soaked your tinder pouch too. Everything that should be dry, the moss, the shredded bark, the fluffy plant fibers you spent days collecting, is wet through. Wet tinder doesn't catch a spark. It just sits there, smug and useless, while your fingers go numb. You need dry material. In a landscape covered in snow, ice, and frozen ground, dry is currently the rarest resource on Earth. You improvise. You strip the outer wet layer off a birch tree, hoping the inner bark is drier. You shave curls of wood with your flint blade, thin enough to catch a spark. You tuck the shavings under your coat against your own body heat, hoping to dry them out faster. It's a good idea. It's also slow. Every minute you spend drying tinder against your chest is a minute you're not making fire, and a minute your body temperature drops instead. Eventually, you have something dry enough to try. You strike the flint against the pyrite. Sparks fly. One lands on the tinder. It smokes. For a second, you think you've done it. Then the wind gusts, and the ember dies before it becomes a flame. You try again. Same steps. Strike, catch, blow gently, protect the spark with your body. This time the wood shavings are damper than you thought, and instead of a flame, you just get more smoke and a fresh set of blisters on your palm. You are cold, your hands are shaking, and you are exactly where you started, except with less daylight left. Here's the part where things get uncomfortable. Modern people love the image of the resourceful caveman who can start a fire anywhere, anytime, with nothing but 2 rocks and sheer willpower. Archaeologists studying the actual evidence have found something messier. Fire use goes back hundreds of thousands of years. But reliable, on-demand firemaking was a much rarer and harder-won skill. And evidence suggests it wasn't evenly spread across every group, every era, or every climate. Some populations, especially during colder and wetter stretches of the Ice Age, appear to have gone through long periods where they used fire constantly but couldn't necessarily start it from scratch whenever they wanted to. Researchers studying Neanderthal sites across different climate periods have found patterns suggesting some groups leaned heavily on scavenging natural fire, a lightning strike, a wildfire on the horizon, and then invested enormous effort into preserving that fire once they had it, rather than confidently manufacturing a new one on demand whenever the old one died. That single detail should terrify you more than the cold does. Some ethnographic accounts describe groups in later, isolated populations who appear to have relied almost entirely on carrying fire from place to place rather than starting it fresh, treating an ember less like a tool and more like an heirloom, something you protect rather than something you can simply remake. It means the ember you're chasing right now isn't necessarily a backup system with a reliable fallback behind it. For groups without mastery of both fire-starting methods, friction and percussion, a lost flame could mean weeks or an entire season without fire at all, unless nature or a neighbor handed you a replacement. You didn't just lose a fire this morning. Depending on how skilled your particular band actually is with the friction method, you may have lost the only reliable source of fire your people have. And everyone in that shelter is currently trusting you to solve a problem that entire populations, tens of thousands of years more experienced than you, sometimes couldn't solve either. You thought the danger today was the cold. The cold is real, but the cold is not actually what should be scaring you. The real danger is this: if you can't relight this fire, through skill, luck, or borrowing an ember from somewhere else, your band doesn't just have an uncomfortable night. It has no reliable way to make fire again, possibly for days, in temperatures that kill. That changes your entire strategy. Frantically striking flint and hoping isn't enough anymore. You need a second option, one with better odds than luck. There is one. A neighboring band, half a day's walk away, has their own fire. If you can reach them, you can beg, trade, or negotiate for a burning coal to carry home, nested in moss inside a hollow piece of wood, kept just barely alive the whole way back. The problem is that half a day's walk in Ice Age terrain, through snow, past predator territory, with cave lions and hyenas who have exactly the same interest in staying warm and fed that you do, is not a walk. It's a gamble with a body count attached. Trying to fix the fire risked failure. Trying to fix it this way risks your life. The sun is dropping fast. You make the call. You go for the ember. You move quickly, staying low, scanning the tree line the way you were taught, the way every firekeeper before you was taught, because the ones who weren't careful didn't get to train the next generation. You reach the other camp as the light turns gray. You explain what happened. In a world with no spare fires just lying around, this isn't a small favor you're asking for. It's asking someone to hand over part of their own survival margin. They give you a coal anyway, maybe out of kindness, maybe because they know that next winter, they might be the ones showing up cold and empty-handed at your fire. You wrap it carefully. Too much air and it burns out fast, too little and it suffocates. And start the walk back in the dark, cupping the one warm thing in a frozen world, listening for anything that moves in the tree line behind you. You make it back. Your hands are numb, your legs are shaking, and the ember, against all odds, is still glowing when you finally kneel over the dead pit and feed it dry tinder you saved specifically for this moment. It catches. For a moment you just kneel there, hands out over the first real heat you've felt all day, not moving, half convinced it will disappear again if you look away from it. Flame returns to camp exactly as the last light of the day disappears. Somewhere out in the dark, something large exhales through its nose and decides your fire isn't worth the trouble tonight. Your people eat warm food. Your people sleep without watching the tree line every 10 seconds. Tomorrow, someone else will take the fire watch. But tonight, it's still your job. Because the fire that almost went out this morning is now the reason everyone in this shelter is alive by midnight. You opened your eyes this morning to silence. No crackling, no light, no smoke. Tonight, you fall asleep to the exact opposite. And for the first time all day, that ordinary sound feels like the most valuable thing you own. Modern history remembers the Ice Age for mammoths, cave paintings, and stone tools. It rarely mentions the unnamed person whose entire job was making sure a single flame never died. Because if that person failed even once, in the wrong week, an entire group's survival could end with it. You didn't invent fire. You didn't even reliably know how to make it from nothing. You just knew how to keep it alive. In the Ice Age, that turned out to be the harder job.